LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the April 16th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. This is actually the four-year anniversary of the beginning of my show. Actually started the first LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup back on April 14th, 2013. And every Sunday I've been picking out the most informative, educational clips for what should be a really good media criticism and political analysis fair use show for you tonight. As usual, my clips come mostly from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. I picked out 11 clips. It's, Easter, so the shows had a lot more pundits, a lot fewer guests, and there was still a lot of news this week. You can see my clip list down at a link I put in the video description, my description of the 11 clips. Most of them are on the topic of foreign policy, if you want to know what the FOR topic is. And it's really actually all about how Donald Trump is using foreign policy to maybe divert attention from his lack of a domestic agenda, or maybe it's a fight between the alt-right, Breitbart, Steve Bannon, America First crowd, who were actually more anti-interventionist. That was like their one positive attribute. Well, that's losing out to the more establishment Republicans, and I guess the Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump wing, and Mike Pence. And so Donald Trump is actually becoming more of a traditional interventionist Republican, even though he said he wasn't going to be interventionist. There's, the strike in Syria, the use of the huge bomb in Afghanistan, and now some threatening words against North Korea. That was the big news. And I'm going to start off actually just with some political comedy like I usually do. Actually, the best skit on Saturday Night Live last night was, of course, Melissa McCarthy, about 30 minutes into Saturday Night Live, did her Sean Spicer impression. And I actually think it was the writing that was really good. I'm going to cut out the slapstick parts. I'm going to edit together a few parts where she's talking about a gaffe that Sean Spicer made on Syria, where he said that Bashar al-Assad was worse than Hitler because he didn't use chemical weapons on his own people, forgetting about the Zyklon B gas that he used on those millions of Jews. But I will explain why I think there's some subtext that shows that Donald Trump is moving more towards the neocon interventionist wing, even in this Saturday Night Live sketch that I edited down, and I will watch with you and discuss with you after we watch together here.
Here, get out of here. All right, shut up. Shut up. Don't push me. I'm sweating my Easter eggs off in this thing. And everybody shut up so I can apologize. Yes, you all got your wish this week, didn't you, huh? Spicy finally made a mistake. As we all know, President Trump recently bombed Syria while eating the most beautiful piece of chocolate cake America has ever laid eyes on. That's a fact, okay? People love that look on that cake. Now, in defending the president's decision, I said that unlike Syrian leader, the leader of, what is his stupid name? I got Bazooka Felicia Ahmad Rashad. Okay? At least Hitler never used chemical weapons, and everybody freaked, okay? They were all like, boo-hoo! Boo-hoo, what about the Holocaust centers? And yeah, I know they're not really called Holocaust centers. Duh. I know that. I'm aware. I clearly meant to say concentration clubs. Okay. Let it drop. So in the spirit of cultural unity, I thought I could shed some light to all the goys out there on this most sacred holiday, Passover. Now bring out my baby dolls. All right. Okay, so here we go. Here's Pharaoh. Okay, Pharaoh is a bad hombre. Got that? And he's doing some really bad stuff to the Jews. Okay, bad stuff to the Jews. And I mean, not even Hitler is... You know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go there again. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on Jews. Okay? So you got Pharaoh's like, you guys need to start making pyramids and stuff. And then the Jews, these guys pass over. Literally. These guys literally float above the pharaoh, kind of like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. As far as bad guys go, the ranking is boom, right up at the top, Hitler. Coming in at number 1. Then Syria's Bashar al-Assad. 3, I'm going to go pharaohs. And then I guess chronologically, Jews take number 4. So that's about wraps it up for me. Happy Easter, everybody. Oh, and by the way, the president's probably going to bomb North Korea tonight.
So that was definitely the funniest part of Saturday Night Live. And like I said, there's this sort of subtext in there about, there's references to a bunch of really weird anti-Semitic, or at least tone deaf in terms of being anti-Semitism, remarks from both Donald Trump and Sean Spicer over the first 100 days of the Trump administration. There was that whole Holocaust Remembrance Day where they forgot to mention the Jews as victims of the Holocaust, and there was that weird back and forth Donald Trump had at his first press conference with a Jewish reporter, saying you're being very dishonest, and when all he was asking about is, can you come out against anti-Semitic attacks on synagogues around the country? And Donald Trump has had a bunch of problems, and some people have said it's this alt-right Breitbart wing of his presidency. And the weird thing is, it's like he has another wing, the Jared Kushner Ivanka Trump wing. Is actually, they're both Jewish. Jared Kushner's Jewish, and Ivanka Trump converted to Judaism to marry Jared Kushner. And so it makes me think of, the whole thing about Abraham Lincoln having this team of rivals in his cabinet. It, like Donald Trump in his close advisor, he has like the Nazis versus the Jews is fighting out in his close advisors, and it seems that the Jews are winning, and that's why he's becoming more interventionist. Although you saw like Sean Spicer, or Melissa McCarthy as Sean Spicer in that last clip, making a whole bunch of like weird anti-Semitic slips, but then also endorsing this "we're attacking North Korea tonight" thing, and the attack on Syria, which is the more interventionist Jared Kushner wing of the Trump White House. And I think that not only is it that the Jews are winning over the Nazis, but then Saturday Night Live also much more explicitly in their cold open half an hour earlier with, again, Alec Baldwin playing Donald Trump in the cold open, they emphasize the other analysis of why Donald Trump is becoming more interventionist. It's the lack of domestic policy achievements. And I want to show, this is Alec Baldwin as Donald Trump, and then Beck Bennett playing Michael Pence. This is the very beginning of the clip. You can see the entire cold open, that entire Sean Spicer impression by Melissa McCarthy. I put links down in the video description to the YouTube videos that Saturday Night Live uploaded. They have almost the entire Saturday Night Live episode uploaded to their YouTube channel. Saturday Night Live did. So anyway, here's the first 43 seconds of the cold open with Donald Trump being played by Alec Baldwin here.
Oh, Pence. Pence is sorry to believe I've been president almost 100 days, and I've already done so much. It's hard to keep track of it all. Read to me again from the list of my accomplishments.
Of course, sir. Nominated Neil Gorsuch.
God, I love that list. What a beautiful, long list. But, Mike, you forgot about the bombings that I've been doing. I just dropped the mother of all bombs on ISIS. The biggest, fattest bomb they've ever seen. It's so big and fat, it almost looks like me in my golf clothes.
I'll add that to the list, sir.
And I'll have a little more coverage of the mother of all bombs dropped on Afghanistan in a later clip. But one thing, and as you can see in that last clip, NBC, Saturday Night Live made explicit Donald Trump, Alec Baldwin as Donald Trump trying to move over to foreign policy because he has so few domestic accomplishments, which, like I said, I think is the subtext of that last clip with Melissa McCarthy playing Sean Spicer. And the one thing I forgot to say about the previous clip is the attack on North Korea, where he said, oh, we're probably attacking North Korea tonight. That is very close to the motto of U.S. forces in North Korea that you'll see. It's not we're attacking North Korea, it's like fight tonight. Very close, like fight tonight is their motto for the U.S. forces in South Korea waiting for an attack by North Korea. So that's not even really funny, as you'll see in a clip I show from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, hosted by Martha Raddatz, in just a couple minutes. I think that's clip number 5, but first I want to show 2 clips from NBC's Meet the Press. First, Chuck Todd getting much more explicit on the subtext analysis I just did from the Saturday Night Live clips. This is Chuck Todd saying straight out that Donald Trump is moving to foreign policy because his domestic agenda isn't really working, and then basically giving a litany of evidence to support that argument for about 3.5 minutes, which I will discuss with you after we watch that clip together over here.
Meanwhile, call them flip-flops, call them policy reversals, or simply a recognition of reality, it can be difficult to know what to make of the president and his evolving positions in recent days. Well, Mr. Trump has certainly held fast to some positions: immigration, business-friendly rules on the environment, and his choice of conservative Neil Gorsuch for the Supreme Court. On a host of other issues, the president has either reversed, altered, or modified his stance from the campaign. There's, of course, nothing implicitly wrong with changing positions, but trying to grasp what's behind the shifts requires some old-style Kremlinology. Is the new president being educated in office? Is he being swayed less by the nationalists in the White House like Steve Bannon and more by the moderates like his son-in-law Jared Kushner and his chief economics advisor Gary Cohn? Or is President Trump simply not hearing from the adoring campaign crowds that used to swoon over his red meat rhetoric? Whatever the cause, the president's policy shifts have people across the political spectrum asking, what does it all mean?
I like to think of myself as a very flexible person. I don't have to have one specific way, and if the world changes, I go the same way.
Donald Trump is wrapping up a head-spinning week of policy reversals, changing his mind on NATO just months ago.
NATO is obsolete. It is obsolete. Some of the smartest people have said, what Trump said is genius. It's obsolete.
But now?
I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete.
And on Syria, after a campaign spent promising he would stay out.
If we did nothing, if we did absolutely nothing, we'd be in great shape.
Last week, Mr. Trump intervened.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike.
On economic policy, he promised to punish China.
I'm going to instruct my Treasury Secretary to label China a currency manipulator, the greatest in the world.
Now he tells the Wall Street Journal they're not currency manipulators.
President Xi wants to do the right thing. We had a very good bonding.
The White House has struggled to explain the president's flip-flops.
It's those entities or individuals in some cases or issues evolving towards the president's position.
Others attribute Mr. Trump's evolution to on-the-job training.
I think President Trump is learning the job, and some of the things that were said during the campaign, I think he now knows simply aren't the way things ought to be.
Shaping these reversals, a growing reliance on son-in-law Jared Kushner and the director of his National Economic Council, former Goldman Sachs president Gary Cohn, and a diminishing role for chief strategist Steve Bannon. In fact, this week, Mr. Trump dressed down Bannon, calling him just a guy who works for me. Many Trump voters, though, are forgiving, at least for now.
I think he does see things differently, as all of us would if we had the responsibility. We just see the tip of the iceberg.
But facing a unified Democratic opposition with an uncomplicated message, not Trump. Republicans on defense ahead of 2018 are struggling to define what it even means to be a Trump Republican when Mr. Trump's views keep changing.
I'm my own man. I'm not going to be told to do by one president or another how to represent the state of Arizona.
And joining me now is the chair.
So that was NBC's Chuck Todd giving the most critical analysis of Donald Trump's flip-flops, both on domestic and foreign policy, and basically saying he's getting sucked in by the establishment. Not so much, and you saw it was these two wings, the Bannon wing versus the Kushner-Cohn wing, which is both foreign and domestic policy, and it may explain why he's becoming more interventionist, which, like I said, I thought that was the one saving grace of the Steve Bannon alt-right Breitbart wing of the Donald Trump presidency, was that they weren't interventionist, that they might keep us out of, things like regime change in Iraq and Libya and things that Hillary Clinton had actually been for, and I covered that a lot during the campaign. By the way, I noticed I was reading the live comments and I got this great super chat donation here. From Ot3, they're congratulating me on my 4-year anniversary, and I haven't done the math, but I saw in the comment section they were saying that was well over $100 US, those 200 New Zealand dollars, and I appreciate that Ot3 appreciates my legal analysis. I'll try to throw in some legal analysis along the way, especially, I forgot to say, I have 2 topics at the end. The final topic is actually immigration, where I always do a little bit of legal analysis, and I'll do some legal analysis of the immigration clip and the failed immigration system in the United States when I show a clip of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly as my last clip, which is also from Meet the Press. But I actually want to show one other Meet the Press clip that I have for the entire show. This is Chuck Todd talking to John McCain. This is back on the subject of the Trump administration becoming more interventionist. And in this question, you'll see Chuck Todd actually explicitly says he's getting sucked in by the establishment. It's not what he promised his voters. And John McCain, since John McCain is like the big neocon, or even, he's not even neocon, he's just a conservative hawk in the Republican, I don't think he's ever met a war he didn't like. If you've been watching the last 4 years of LiberalViewer Sunday live clip Roundup, you've seen John McCain appear a lot of times, and have you ever seen him be against a military intervention? I can't recall even one time. Maybe someone down in the comment section will correct me, but here's John McCain basically saying, good, he's moving over to be one of us war hawks. Donald Trump, welcome to the war hawk community, which confirms the whole thing in about 1 minute and 15 seconds from Meet the Press this morning over here.
Changes. You said he's growing in office. There are some that will say, no, the Washington establishment sucked him in.
I hope so.
Okay.
No, on national security, I do believe he has assembled a strong team, and I think very appropriately he's listening to them. And that's the area, of course, where I'm...
But I want to go to quickly on the Washington consensus. Not everybody thinks the Washington consensus on foreign policy has worked in the Middle East over the last 25 years.
And it hasn't. And you're right, it hasn't. But it wasn't because of the people that are around him now. In fact, if previous president... for 8 years, we basically did nothing in response to some of the most horrendous war crimes in history. At least he did something. Now I hope that there will be a strategy to follow that up. And look, America is about a moral superiority and our willingness not to fight every fight, but at least respond to horrendous acts of inhumanity and war crimes. And also, by the way, Syria will continue to have the spread of al-Qaeda if we don't take care of Bashar al-Assad.
All right, Senator John McCain, unfortunately I have to leave it there.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
I don't know. I mean, the United States is engaged in, I don't want to draw any moral equivalence between the United States and, say, Syria, but the United States intervention in the Middle East has not always gone so well, and it's hurt a lot of people, and some of it has violated international law in a way that I think would probably qualify as war crimes. So I think that Chuck Todd was a little bit soft on John McCain to leave it there, but I guess that's something you often see on the corporate media for the last 4 years. And speaking of things you've seen a lot on the corporate media for the last 4 years, this next clip I want to show you is a theme I've come back to over and over again on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, the permanent co-host, or I can't remember what her actual title is, Martha Raddatz, who often hosts the show when George Stephanopoulos isn't there, and sometimes co-hosts it with him when he is there. I've been making videos with Martha Raddatz going all the way back to the George W. Bush administration, something about, does Bush have a strategy in Iraq? And I showed her asking some really good questions because she knows a lot about the military and military strategy, and she has a lot of good contacts in the military. The downside of that is, I think, in some ways she identifies really sometimes too strongly with the people she's covering, and she usually asks tough questions of them anyway, but I thought she missed a really important tough question in this next clip I'm going to show, where She basically gets really great access to U.S. forces in South Korea, talks to like several colonels and a lieutenant general. I didn't even put all their names in the video description, and talks about their readiness to combat North Korea. But what you're seeing is kind of a commercial or an advertisement, even propaganda for the U.S. military. You can see, especially the lieutenant general at the end there, he has a message. He's trying to tell North Korea that we're going to shoot all your missiles down. You're not going to hurt us at all. And what's really missing, maybe the Patriot missiles that they talk about in this clip can shoot every North Korean short-range missile down before it hits South Korea, which that's a big if. I kind of doubt that. But what about all the artillery? Martha Raddatz never asked about the artillery. But otherwise, this is a really great inside look into the military. That, what is it, Fight Tonight? I think that something like Fight Tonight is their slogan that starts off the clip I promised you from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Martha Raddatz. This is actually 4.5 minutes, really worth watching if you want to see this inside look, but somewhat propagandist look from the U.S. military from ABC this morning here.
It's a pride. There aren't many places I go into where it says Fight Tonight in giant letters. It's a little frightening.
Absolutely. But for us, it's our day-to-day training. We're always training at that level to be able to fight tonight because we don't know when that call is going to come.
We visited another top-secret facility, the first time ever for a camera crew. If a missile is aimed at South Korea, the job here, blow it out of the sky. North Korea has conducted just 5 underground nuclear tests in the last 10 years. But missile launches are far more common, several this year alone. Every one closely monitored on these screens, including last night's failed launch. What's it like in here when a ballistic missile is launched?
Well, you would think it would be hectic, but due to the level of training of the soldiers here, it's actually a pretty calm exercise. I would compare it to maybe an air traffic controller tower.
Right next door, rows and rows of bunk beds. If war comes to South Korea, the staff will sleep right here.
And it allows us to do continuous operations for an extended period of time.
And you got food, you got everything you need.
We have food, showers, latrines.
Lieutenant General Thomas Bergeson is deputy commander of all U.S. and UN forces in South Korea. What concerns you most?
So our biggest concern is that he's going to miscalculate. That's always the #1 concern. So we want to make it crystal clear to the North Korean leadership that this would be a completely futile endeavor were he to challenge this strong, ironclad bilateral alliance.
Because we have a new president, and he, no doubt, Kim Jong-un wants to test him in the same way that dynamic works. Is this, from your time here, from watching here, one of the more dangerous times?
I would say that there's certainly, you can feel the tensions, but clearly this is serious. And they need to know that we are prepared and that this defensive alliance is strong and ready to fight tonight.
Part of that defense, Patriot missile batteries.
And you'll notice here in Korea, we keep our launchers loaded with live interceptors at all times so that we're ready to fight tonight.
Tell me a little bit about the batteries, just in terms of what they can stop, how they stop them, how that works.
Yes, ma'am. Well, this weapon system is capable of defeating a wide range of enemy capabilities, from unmanned aerial systems to short-range and even long-range ballistic missiles. This battery is designed to search for, detect, and engage those inbound ballistic missiles.
At OSAN, they're confident in this system, claiming the success rate of the Patriot is nearly 100%.
And it's a bullet-on-bullet scenario where the Patriot missile hits the threat missile and destroys it.
A few miles from the Patriots, out on the flight line, are the Growlers.
So they have jamming capability, electronic jamming capability, so they can deny the enemy the capability to launch surface-to-air missiles at our aircraft.
Facing that threat, Major Sean Walsh, an F-16 pilot, up in the skies training at least 3 times a week within miles of the North Korean border.
You get to see the stark contrast because as the lights start to come on, and you fly along the DMZ, you can look out one window and it's as bright as day with the city of Seoul and then all of South Korea. And then you look out the other side of your cockpit and it is just darkness.
But make no mistake, it's that darkness which causes concern, the lack of hard intelligence, the unpredictability, and the war of words right now have created a region on edge.
Kim Jong-un is basically saying that he could strike and take out any of the American military bases. Could that happen?
No. No, they could try, but as you saw today, out here you have Air Defense Artillery Brigade, and they have the technology, the capability, and they're ready to intercept those kinds of missiles. So they could try, it would be futile.
And we're back here.
So, like I said, some really good inside access there, but also a significant dose of, pro-U.S. military propaganda. I don't think I can call it anything else. And that message at the end there, we're going to shoot them all down. And earlier, Martha Raddatz even reported, nearly 100% accuracy for the Patriot missiles, which nearly 100%, well, how near is nearly is one question. And, how well is, what kind of testing conditions. But also, what about the artillery? Like I said before, I showed the clip. So you can let me know what you think down in the comment section about whether the access and information that Martha Raddatz gets is worth the dose of pro-U.S. military propaganda. I mean, if you're taking it as one source and you're looking at it skeptically, I'm glad that there's somebody who's going inside there and getting to see things that people don't normally get to see. And as long as you know what the dose of propaganda you're getting with the access, I don't see the real harm in it, but you can disagree with me down in the comment section. And I actually want to give a little bit of kudos to CBS's Face the Nation. They had their reporter, what's his name, Ben Tracy, who actually gave the most airtime to the North Korean position, which I guess if you're going to give pro-U.S. military propaganda time, you should give Korea time. ABC actually had Bob Woodruff do a report on his many visits to North Korea, but I don't think they really gave. It was more like, look how weird and strange they are. They've grown some, but they're very strange and weird people that we should be scared of almost, from the Bob Woodruff report. Here you see Ben Tracy from CBS's Face the Nation. Actually, their vice minister for foreign affairs gets significant airtime on a corporate media station to give the North Korean position. And the way you heard the almost bluster from that lieutenant general at the end of the ABC Martha Raddatz clip there saying, we're going to shoot down all your missiles. Well, here's a North Korean official kind of blustering, saying, we could preemptively go nuclear if we think you're going to attack us, which that's kind of scary, but that's in this 1 minute 45 second CBS Face the Nation clip from this morning here.
President Trump sent a naval strike force to the Korean Peninsula and has called North Korea a menace that is looking for trouble. North Korea calls these provocative acts. Han Song-ryol is the country's vice minister of foreign affairs. He said the Trump administration's policy towards North Korea is the most hostile ever. Do you feel like your missile launches, your nuclear tests, are making this situation worse? The U.S. says North Korea's nuclear buildup is the root cause of the escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula. But we've got to face reality. The U.S. is the one that compelled North Korea to go nuclear and is responsible for this vicious cycle. North Korea says it will not provoke a war, but if they detect an attack from the U.S., they will launch a preemptive strike with every weapon they have. So you're saying if you feel that North Korea is going to be attacked, you will use nuclear weapons? He responded, of course. China, North Korea's one main ally, is worried this war of words could quickly become an actual war on their doorstep. At a news conference Friday, China's foreign minister said there would be no winners in a war. Whoever starts the war on the Korean Peninsula, he said, has to bear the historical responsibility and the consequences. The Trump administration would like China to put more pressure on North Korea to end its nuclear program, but it's unclear if that would work. North Korea's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs told me there is nothing that will stop them from conducting a sixth nuclear test, and they will do it whenever they see fit.
CBS News.
So that's kind of Trump's red line, no more North Korean nuclear tests. And in some other clips I didn't take, there were some, was it ABC? I think, was it ABC or CBS had a reporter talking about the different military options. I think it was ABC, where there was a kinetic option and then an electromagnetic option where they could do like an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP bomb that would like knock out their nuclear facility, or a kinetic one, which is basically a big bomb that goes boom, you know, kind of like that Moab thing. And the mother of all bombs they dropped in Afghanistan, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But I want to show one more clip on this North Korea topic, and this one is also from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Martha Raddatz had on the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMasters, who actually on another show I heard the H in H.R. McMasters stands for Henry. So someone should ask him, why doesn't he go by Henry? Or is that too like, there's something wrong with the name Henry? But anyway, he's H.R. McMaster. He's the National Security Advisor who took over when Michael Flynn got kicked out for not reporting his connections with Russia, and then he later registered as a foreign agent. And in just a couple minutes, I'm going to show a clip of K.T. McFarland, the former Fox News commentator who was brought in by Michael Flynn and is now possibly on her way out, which is what Chris Wallace asks her about in just a minute. But first, here's Martha Raddatz asking H.R. McMaster about this latest missile test, or about the North Korea situation. And you'll see his answer when Martha Raddatz asks him, this famous quote from Donald Trump that, it's, not so easy. It's kind of like healthcare. Oh, it turns out North Korea, after I talked to the Chinese premier for 10 minutes, it's not so easy, the whole North Korea situation. And Martha Raddatz asked him about that, and he basically says this is a China problem. China. That's the answer of H.R. McMaster, which I will discuss with you after we watch that clip together over here.
Said about China in that primary debate, but this week he said, after listening to President Xi, he realized it's not so easy. Are you truly confident you can get China to pressure North Korea in a meaningful way?
Well, we'll see what happens. What we do know is that in the midst of the responding to the mass murder of the Syrian regime, the president and the first lady hosted an extraordinarily successful conference summit with President Xi and his team. And not only did they establish a very warm relationship, but since that time they worked together on other issues. On North Korea, they worked together, but they worked together as well in connection with the response to the mass murder on the part of the Assad regime, in connection with the UN vote. I think President Xi was courageous in distancing himself from the Russians, isolating really the Russians and the Bolivians. And this all occurred on the same day that President Trump hosted the Secretary General of NATO, representing our wonderful NATO allies. And I think the world saw that, and they saw, well, what club do you want to be in? The Russian-Bolivian club, or in the club with the United States, working together on our mutual interests and the interest of peace, security, and I think it was just a great week for the United States, and thanks mainly to our president's leadership.
You sound very confident. President Trump, of course, sounds very confident. But one final question on this. Every president since Bill Clinton has said the U.S. will not tolerate a nuclear-armed North Korea, and North Korea has only grown stronger in their capabilities. So why do you think President Trump will have a different outcome?
Well, as you mentioned, this is a problem that has been passed down from multiple administrations. But our president, I think it's really the consensus with the president, our key allies in the region, Japan and South Korea in particular, but also the Chinese leadership, that this problem is coming to a head. And so it's time for us to undertake all actions we can short of a military option to try to resolve this peacefully. And so we're going to rely on our allies like we always do. But we're also going to have to rely on Chinese leadership. I mean, North Korea is very vulnerable to pressure from the Chinese. 80% of North Korea's trade comes from China. All of their energy requirements are fulfilled by China. So in the coming weeks, months, I think there's a great opportunity for all of us who are really under the threat now of this unpredictable regime to take action short of armed conflict so we can avoid the worst.
And I want to turn to Russia and Syria.
When he's talking about the threat of this unpredictable regime, is he talking about North Korea or is he talking about Donald Trump? That, of course, Martha Raddatz didn't ask that follow-up question, but I thought that even though there was a clip that they played on ABC earlier of Donald Trump during the campaign saying that the solution to North Korea was to get China to deal with it, I think there's still been this big shift. I was talking about the other shifts, the shift towards interventionism, the shift towards the establishment, and, you know, the Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, Ivanka Trump wing versus the Steve Bannon, Steve Miller, KT McFarland wing. You'll see KT McFarland's probably on her way out in a clip I'm going to show in a minute. But in addition to that, there's also this shift, supposedly, possibly from Russia to China, because Donald Trump said, you know, not any negative things about Vladimir Putin for the whole campaign, and until just the last few days he started saying, you know, things aren't going well with Russia, and then he started saying all these nice things about China, and he just met with the president of China at Mar-a-Lago, and they spent hours together, and with Melania and the president of China's wife, and they got to know each other, and they really connected, and now he's saying all these nice things about China after all the China stuff during the campaign, and, you know, no more currency manipulation. He, you know, even tweeted something about, you know, why should I talk about currency manipulation when they're helping us with North Korea or something like that. So that's another big shift that's going on. And before I get to the final clip on this whole foreign policy topic, I have one more Saturday Night Live clip. These are a few jokes from Weekend Update. This is sort of a transition from North Korea over to the mother of all bombs that was dropped in Afghanistan, which is also going to be the final news clip, will be Chris Wallace over on Fox News Sunday asking who, was the one who authorized that. Oh, Sandy's walking by. I actually have a picture of Sandy that you can, let me see, should I take a picture of Sandy for the 4th anniversary here? Sandy, get ready. Oh, hold on. Well, I'll take it while I play the clip. I'll take a picture of Sandy, but if you want to see a picture of Sandy, I put one up on my LiberalViewer my Facebook.com/LiberalViewer page. This was Sandy waking up for the show earlier. Now she's finally come into the room. So you can like my Facebook page if you want to see stuff like that. But as I was saying, I'm going to show a Saturday Night Live clip that starts with another explicit connection on Saturday Night Live between the foreign policy adventures in North Korea and the failure of Trump's domestic policy from Colin. That's actually from Colin Jost at the beginning. Then Michael Che. There's also a good joke at the end from Colin Jost about the mother of all bombs, and that, I don't want to give away all the jokes. I guess I should probably comment on the jokes after you see the jokes, and maybe I'll get you another picture of Sandy, who just showed up for the broadcast, while we watch that minute and 15-second Saturday Night Live clip, which, of course, the entire Saturday Night Live Weekend Update is pretty much available on their Saturday Night Live YouTube channel, and I put links down to the video you're about to see available free on YouTube in this clip.
We have breaking news tonight about Kim Jong-un, who actually describes himself as the Harry Styles of North Korea. Just hours ago, North Korea attempted a missile launch, but as soon as it took off, it immediately exploded. North Korea claimed the failed launch was actually just a tribute to Donald Trump's first 100 days in office.
In an interview, President Trump explained that his stance on North Korea changed after meeting with China's president, saying, after listening for 10 minutes, I realized it's not so easy. Which part? The North Korea part or the listening for 10 minutes part? Also, Also, nothing says I wasn't really listening more than saying, I listened for 10 minutes. You're never gonna hear, I listened for 10 minutes and now I know karate. You can't just half listen and politely nod to the president of China like he's asking you to check out his new mixtape.
This week, our military dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. The bomb cost $16 million and reportedly took out 94 members of ISIS, which doesn't sound that efficient. But remember, Fox News spent $13 million just to get rid of 5 women.
I had to keep the building applause after that because, you know, Bill O'Reilly on Fox News went on vacation on Tuesday, and I was just watching Gabriel Sherman, who's a MSNBC contributor now over on AM Joy with Joyanne Reid on MSNBC, talking about the possibility that Bill O'Reilly's vacation may never end and he may never be coming back to Fox News, depending on what the Murdoch family decides about all those sexual harassment suits. But that's kind of up in the air. But it was also kind of, I thought, a good joke on the mother of all bombs that was dropped on Afghanistan. That, you know, that's not really a joke, and killing all those people isn't a joke, but it does show this shift, or is it a shift in the Trump administration? But one thing that was kind of strange about the way that bomb was dropped in Afghanistan was that Donald Trump was asked whether he specifically authorized it, or whether the military did it without his authorization. And his answer was, oh, you know, well, I authorize my military and then they get going. And he didn't really answer the question. And you'll see at the beginning of this clip with Chris Wallace and Deputy National Security Advisor for maybe another couple weeks, KT McFarland, who used to be a Fox News commentator, he shows the clip of Donald Trump's answer, but he doesn't really say that the question was, well, who authorized it? You or did your military do it without your authorization? You know, dropping this mother of all bombs, the largest non-nuclear bomb in the U.S. arsenal, and Fox News doesn't make clear that Donald Trump didn't really answer the question. And then they talk about KT McFarland leaving, and I don't think it's really that confrontational an interview. Certainly doesn't make up for the fact that they're interviewing someone who used to be a Fox News commentator, as I will discuss after we watch that clip together over here.
The U.S. dropped the largest non-nuclear bomb in our arsenal, the largest it's ever used in combat, on a cave complex in Afghanistan, killing dozens of ISIS fighters. Here was President Trump's explanation.
What I do is I authorize my military. We have the greatest military in the world, and they've done a job as usual. So we have given them total authorization, and that's what they're doing. And frankly, that's why they've been so successful lately.
But KT, while that apparently was a success, there have been some tragic mistakes recently. Just this week, 18 Syrian allies who are rebels who are allies of us were killed in a friendly fire incident by U.S. forces. And the question some people are asking is the White House exercising enough oversight?
Well, first of all, what the president saw, what we all saw when we came into office, was that previous administrations had a lot of decisions that should have been made by the battlefield commanders. They were being made by the West Wing of the White House, and that wasn't the right place. The West Wing of the White House doesn't know what the battlefield is like, what the conditions are like, or the immediacy of the threats that they're facing. So President Trump has taken a number of steps to delegate that authority back where it belongs, back where it was in the Reagan administration, frankly, to the battlefield. And so what you're seeing now is exactly what's happened. Now, sometimes mistakes are being made, and we regret any loss of life, and especially to any of our allies. But on the other hand, it is the battlefield commander's decision to make, and we do not have a president who is going to be sitting there picking out bombing targets. He's left that up to the military, and so far, with a few tragic exceptions, but so far the military has been terrific. I mean, look at the Syria attack on the airport that was used by the Syrians to deliver those chemical weapons. That was done completely successfully, it was done quickly, and it was done with enormous effect, I think.
KT, I want to ask you one last question, and we're less than a minute left, and I want to talk about you. General Michael Flynn brought you in as his #2 national security advisor. Now there's a new head of the NSC, that's General McMaster. He apparently wants his own team. The reports, you know, are that you're out and you're moving to Singapore to be the ambassador there. What's happened, and how do you feel about it?
Well, first of all, President Trump hired me, and he gave me a call on Thanksgiving Day to ask me to be the Deputy National Security Advisor. So I want to set that straight. Now, General Flynn has departed, and General McMaster has arrived. I've helped through that transition, and the President and I have had a number of conversations over the last 2 months, really, about what my role would continue to be and where I could be best used for what his vision is of foreign policy. So I can tell you we talked about it again last night, and there are changes coming, but I'm not going to tell you what they are. You've got enough secrets out of me this day.
All right, but I won't pack my bags to visit you in Singapore quite yet. KT, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Hey, one more thing, Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
One more thing. Happy Easter to you and everybody at Fox News and your entire very large viewing audience.
Well, thank you, and we wish the same to you and to the President's Party. Thank you, especially for your time this holiday weekend, and it's always good to talk with you, KT.
Thanks, Chris.
Up next,
wow, that was like quite a love fest at the end, and that whole interview I did not think was very confrontational, not up to, you know, Chris Wallace is supposedly one of the most straight news people on the biased Fox News network, but I've often seen him be swayed by his own obvious conservative biases and also his personal biases, in that I think he may be friendly with KT McFarland. You saw that, I think, when he interviewed Ben Carson. Ben Carson apparently is a personal friend of Chris Wallace, and I think it showed in his interviews. And I think it was pretty unconscionable the way they started the clip. Like I said before I showed the clip, they really did not put in the context of the question where Donald Trump was being asked, you know, did you authorize this largest non-nuclear bomb in our arsenal being used in Afghanistan, or did your military just go ahead and do it without your authorization? And, you know, Donald Trump should be able to stand up for, you know, whether he's authorized his military to go ahead without further authorization from him on that type of decision, or whether he did it. But, you know, there was a pundit, I think on NBC's Meet the Press, I can't remember, I think he might be, what was his name? Clinton Watts? Is that the guy who testified that Russia had, you know, used fake news to infiltrate our political system? Well, I think that might be his name. Anyway, I think he was the one who said that that Donald Trump was actually using this whole thing as you know, that he was using his military and his ambiguity on whether there was authorization so that he can, like, take credit for the good things, but then, like, that Yemen raid that went bad, he can say, well, you know, that was the generals, blame the generals, which is not something a president should really do. He should, you know, the buck stops here, and commander-in-chief is the person who's in charge. And, you know, it's okay if he wants to give battlefield commanders the ability to authorize things like the mother of all bombs, but at least he should say that he's done it and take responsibility. But anyway, that's the last clip I want to show on the huge topic of Donald Trump's interventionism and his foreign policy adventures that he may be using to distract from his lack of domestic policy achievements, or it may show that the establishment, Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, Ivanka Trump wing is winning out over Steve Bannon and Steve Miller and the Breitbart America Firsters. The alt-right is losing to the neocons, or I don't know, you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. But as I mentioned a little earlier, before I get to the next topics, I also have to acknowledge I saw a couple more of the super chat. Here's Gabriel Sparks gave me a nice super chat. $25 super chat donation I saw in the live comments from Gabriel Sparks, just thanking me for my work, so that's really nice. And then Witless X thanks for the cool space. I hope you think this is a cool space. Sometimes there's some trolls in there, but I believe in free speech, so maybe free people think that some trolling allowed in the free speech zone is a cool space. I happen to like it that way, but I'm gonna now. I really appreciate all of you who are giving the super chat contributions, and of course, I've had 3 new patrons this week. There's a Patreon link down in the video description. It really helps out, especially you've probably heard about all the loss of YouTube ad revenue. Some people saying they've lost 95%. I think I've lost about 70% of my YouTube ad revenue, which I hope is only temporary. I hope it just means YouTube lost a bunch of advertisers, so we all get less advertising revenue, which happens from time to time, and I can weather that storm. But the contributions and the patrons really help me keep spending 8 or 10 hours every Sunday for every week for 208 Sundays. That's 4 years now. When you support me, that really and even those of you who just give me the thumbs up or supportive comments, it helps me keep going and doing this work every week after week. And anyway, like I promised, I have 2 quick clips at the end on a couple topics. There wasn't first. The tax day was yesterday, or it was April 15th. Actually, if you're filing taxes, they're not due until April 18th. But there were a bunch of protests around the country, including in Berkeley, where some anarchists came in, or some like fascists, or who knows. There were fights, and you'll see video of that in this Jake Tapper clip from CNN State of the Union. And then he brought on his guest, Senator Bernie Sanders, who maybe could have beaten Donald Trump if he had beaten Hillary Clinton. We'll never know the answer to that question, but I think Bernie Sanders does a good job explaining how Democrats have to have a 50-state strategy and why Donald Trump needs to release his tax returns, which was the point of the protest yesterday that Jake Tapper introduced in this clip.
Between and over President Trump this weekend in Berkeley, California, 11 people were injured and at least 21 people were arrested as fights broke out between pro-Trump and anti-Trump protesters. The Los Angeles Times is reporting that about 50 members of the far-right militia group called the Oath Keepers came from Montana to protect pro-Trump demonstrators. This was one of many rallies that took place yesterday, including many around the country to protest President Trump's refusal to release his tax returns. We're back with Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, in addition to that Berkeley protest, Democrats across the country yesterday gathered for rallies all over on tax day, calling for President Trump to release the last 10 years of his tax returns and disclose any foreign conflicts of interest. Now, I've heard that many Democratic senators believe that the president's tax returns could be subpoenaed in the course of the Senate Intelligence Committee investigation into Russian meddling in the U.S. election. Do you think his returns should be subpoenaed?
I think the American people need to understand what kind of involvement Trump's business dealings have abroad and what kind of leverage those dealings may have on his policies as president of the United States. They want a president who's going to represent the American people, not his own interests, business interests, which extend all over the world. But, Jake, when you talk about planes, as I think you know, tomorrow afternoon, Tom Perez, who's the chair of the Democratic Party, and I will be taking a 9-state tour all across this country to do what I think is absolutely necessary, and that is to help revitalize American democracy. So many of our people are giving up on the political process. It is very frightening. In the last presidential election, when Trump won, we had the lowest voter turnout in 20 years. And in the previous 2 years before that, in the midterm election, we had the lowest voter turnout in 70 years. And I think what's happening is the middle class shrinks as people perceive that the media and Congress is not hearing their pain about a declining standard of living, income and wealth inequality, not being able to afford to send their kids to college. They're giving up on the political process. And we cannot allow that to happen. So Tom and I are going to be going all over this country. We're going to be fighting to see that the Democratic Party becomes a 50-state party. You can't just be a West Coast party and an East Coast party. And we need a bottom-up party, a grassroots party, which is prepared to stand up to the big money interests, which have so much influence over the political and economic development of our country.
Well, let's talk about that. Kansas and Georgia are red states. You're on this red state tour that's going to kick off tomorrow. But just this week, a Democrat you supported lost an election for a special House seat election in Kansas. A Democratic candidate, John Ossoff, is seeking to fill in Georgia a seat vacated by the now Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Dr. Tom Price in Georgia. Are you concerned that the DNC, they're doing this big red state tour with you, but a lot of people criticized the DNC for not sending enough resources to Kansas. So it's great that they're doing this display.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. I mean, the point here is that I think all over grassroots America, whether they're Democrats, independents, or Republicans, people are perceiving that Trump did not tell the truth in his campaign in terms of what he would do as president of the United States. He was going to drain the swamp. Well, he's in fact appointed more billionaires to his cabinet than any president in history, et cetera, et cetera. So what I think has happened now in Kansas, it is true that the Democratic candidate lost. It is true that the Democratic Party should have put more resources into that election. But it is also true that he ran 20 points better than the Democratic candidate for president did in Kansas. So what you're seeing in Kansas, what you're seeing in Georgia, I believe you're going to see it in Montana, I believe you're going to see it all over this country, is that many so-called red states, working people are going to wake up and say, wait a second, Republicans want to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and education, and they want to give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 1%. No, that's not what we elected Trump to do. Yeah, climate change is real. It's not a hoax. We got to move to sustainable energy. I think all over this country, in red states and in blue states, people are beginning to stand up. They're beginning to fight back. They're demanding a government which does not just represent the billionaires, but represents the working class of this country.
Senator, I want to ask you about this.
So, I miss Bernie. I really wish Bernie had been the candidate and not Hillary Clinton. Many people don't think it would have made a difference, but I think he would have been a better candidate, especially against Donald Trump, more so than any of the other possible. Maybe we're living in some alternate universe, and maybe there is an alternate universe where Bernie Sanders is president. Is that possible? Well, the sad thing is that the tax protests didn't get a lot of coverage. The protests about Donald Trump not releasing his tax returns, and all these tens of thousands of people at least who protested. Donald Trump just, tweeted out, I think afterwards, these are like, who's paying for these organized protests? I did what, no Republican has ever done, or no Republican, they thought no Republican could do, which is winning the Electoral College. Why are these paid organized protests happening about my tax returns? Didn't he say when the audit was over, he was going to release his tax returns? If you watch the show, he did say that. But anyway, so that was the sad part. But the important part is what Bernie Sanders said about the 50-state strategy, and that Kansas election, even though the Republican only won by +3 points in what's supposed to be like a +15 Republican district. If the country's going 12 points in the Democratic direction, things are going to be way different after the 2018 election. And I've heard some people say it's impossible for the Democrats to win back the Senate in 2018 or the House in 2018, especially because of the gerrymandered districts still left over from the 2010 census, where Republicans held all these state houses and drew districts, so that even though Democrats get more votes, Republicans get a lot more representation in the House of Representatives. But first, gerrymandering is under attack legally in the Supreme Court, so there may be some relief there. And if there's going to be a 12-point shift, that's enough for like a wave election. I don't know if that's going to hold up to 2018, but this Georgia election that Bernie Sanders was talking about, that'll be the next big test. So like I promised, there's one more clip. It's on immigration. I'm going to do a little legal analysis, especially about the Homeland Security Secretary saying that deportations are the criminal justice system, which is actually completely incorrect from a legal standpoint. And there are a couple other things he says that are noteworthy, talking about whether Donald Trump is actually engaging in mass deportations, which is a big concern in the circles where, you know, I'm an activist, where there are a lot of undocumented people, dreamers, DACA recipients who are worried that they're going to be deported by the Trump administration. Well, here's what the head of deportations, Homeland Security, is the head of ICE and Customs and Border Protection. You know, all the deportation and immigration apparatus is under Homeland Security. And this is John Kelly in the final clip for tonight talking to Chuck Todd about, you know, are they going to deport 11 million undocumented? He says like illegal aliens or undocumented, but then later he actually says just illegals. But here it is.
And I began by asking him if the administration is creating, in effect, a new large deportation force.
There are a huge number, as you know, of illegal aliens or undocumented individuals that, you know, have to be dealt with in one way or another. I would argue, Chuck, that we have to straighten this out, and I think I place that squarely on the United States Congress. It's a hugely complex series of laws, and I get an awful lot. I engage the Hill quite a bit. And get an earful about what I should do and what I shouldn't do.
Right.
But it all comes down to the law, doesn't it? And we are a nation of laws, and I would hope that the Congress fixes a lot of these problems.
Okay, you say it's on Congress, but there's others that say if you just enforce the law on the books. So what is the issue? Are the laws on the books hard to enforce and they need to be changed? Is that what you're saying here?
Well, the laws in the books are pretty straightforward. If you're here illegally, you should leave, or you should be deported, put through the system. Mm-hmm. But there are 11 million people, and it's very complicated. There are people who came here as children. There are people here who came here illegally many years ago and have married local men and women and had children. It's a very complicated problem. But the law is the law, and but I don't have unlimited capacity to execute.
Is this the best use of money? Is this the resources you need, that you need to hire more people to deal with this issue? Is that your number one problem?
Yeah, I think so. The people, you know, there's two aspects. Of course, ICE operate more or less in the interior, and you know, do targeted actions against illegal aliens. Plus, what I mean by that is, just because you're in the United States illegally doesn't necessarily get you targeted. It's got to be something else. And we're operating more or less at the other end of the spectrum, and that is criminals, multiple convictions.
But define a criminal here, because that's where there's been, so it seemed as if in the Obama administration there was one definition. There seems to be another definition in this administration. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say that the definition of criminal has not changed, but where on the spectrum of criminality we operate has changed.
So can you give me an example of somebody that wasn't deported before that you're deporting now?
Well, someone, as an example, with multiple DUIs, even a single DUI, depending on other aspects, would get you into the system. And remember, for the most...
And this wouldn't have been the case under the previous administration.
But you got to remember that there's a system, a legal justice system in place, and the law deports people. Secretary Kelly doesn't, ICE doesn't. It's the United States, criminal justice system, a justice system that deports people.
I want to go back to the 11 minutes.
So he doesn't deport people, even though the department he's the head of deports a lot of people, and is deporting more people than President Obama, who was the deporter-in-chief, or at least they've made it, their definition of who should be deportable has gotten a lot more broad. You know, he talked about DUIs, but also using a false Social Security number, which is something that undocumented immigrants do a lot, even if they've been here many years and married people and had American citizen children. And, you know, he said, I don't have unlimited capacity, so he's at least acknowledging that he's not going to deport everyone, but what I thought was really disturbing was what he said at the end. He said it was like part of the criminal justice, and then he said, oh, well, justice system. He seemed to acknowledge that deportation is actually not a criminal issue. It's a civil issue. That's why people who are being deported have much less in terms of due process rights. That was something that goes back to the 19th century, where the Supreme Court decided, this is my legal analysis I promised earlier to someone who donated via Super Chat, and also I saw another donation from Timsky with no comment, but thank you, Timsky, for the Super Chat donation. This has been a great four-year anniversary show, making up for the lack of ads that YouTube put on last week's show, so thank you for your donations. But I just wanted to say that the legal analysis that I promised based on a donation was that the criminal justice system, based on a Supreme Court case back in the 19th century, decided the Supreme Court decided that deportation is not a punishment. So you don't get the due process that you would get for punishment for a crime. It's just a civil matter. So that means, for example, you don't have a right to a lawyer, even if you're like 5 years old and you're going into immigration court. There have been government lawyers who've tried to claim, oh, 5-year-olds can understand what's going on in court. They don't need a court-appointed lawyer. So at least here in California, where we have bills pending that will actually provide lawyers for people going through immigration deportation, there's a real need for more due process. That's something the ACLU has been fighting for a long time, and I've been involved in that fight, and I will continue to report on the immigration issue, even if it's just one little clip at the end of my LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup on the 4-year anniversary of my show. I appreciate all of you who joined me for my commentary and for the clips. I hope you appreciated the time I put in picking out the clips and thinking about the commentary and doing my fair use media criticism and political analysis. I will definitely be back next Sunday. And for the Sandy fans out there, I promised when Sandy showed up I would show you a picture of Sandy. Here she is. Finally coming to the room and she perked up when I mentioned her name. You saw there was the Constitution next to her there also. So Sandy will continue to show up for the show. Even if YouTube doesn't give me the ad revenue, I appreciate those of you who are supporting me with Super Chat donations, Patreon patrons, giving me a thumbs up, giving me supportive comments, and I will continue doing this LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup for the foreseeable future. I can't promise you 4 more years, but 4 more years. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. And until next week, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.